I'm going to call this meeting of the Northwest Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present. This meeting has been duly called and that the notice of public meeting has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code 551. We have one item for discussion and action tonight, and that is item 2A, and that is to provide adjustments to multiple school board attendance boundaries and define new attendance boundaries for new campuses. So we don't have public participation on the agenda tonight, but as after we vote, because I assume that most of you here are doing concerning the middle school boundaries, so we're going to go ahead and allow you to speak after that, if that's fine. So, Dr. Warren, I'll turn that over to you.
All right, board members, I'm making a recommendation tonight for the approval of the campuses that are affected by the elementary zone attendance changes. If you remember from the presentation, we have the opening of Curtis Elementary School, which will affect Hazlitt Elementary, Peterson Elementary, and Nance Elementary School. And then for growth issues, we have an additional recommendations moving a group of kids from Granger to Hughes Elementary School, from Thompson to Sendera Ranch Elementary School, and from Hatfield to Clara Love Elementary School. So I am recommending you approve the elementary attendance zone recommendations as was recommended by your attendance zone committee. They did a fantastic job going through those options and creating those zones and those recommendations. So if anyone would have any questions, Tim's ready to answer them. I'm ready to answer them on the elementary zone recommendation.
Can you pop those up, Tim?
There we go. How's that? Better? So here's the elementary zone for 18. I have a little mouse here today so you can see the orange areas here. This bottom area, I say the mouse is going to work, maybe not. There we go. This bottom area being removed from Peterson. And then this area being removed from Hazlitt. Again, this is the area that was once part of Peterson that 2 years ago we moved to Hazlitt because of the growth and the population in Peterson. And then this area, which is effectively the railroad track west of the Nance portion, effectively known as Berkshire community, would make those three areas be the areas that make up elementary 18 Lizzie Curtis. The next one is Granger and Hughes. This north portion circled in blue there, Granger, it has if you look at the two charts there, it basically has the right amount of students and yields that we're seeing from that development that balances the load between those two schools. And we're currently doing the addition to Hughes to make it an 850 campus so that it's in line with Granger on its population. And that will be ready this summer in time for school to start. So Granger, of course, has been overpopulated for several years. I think it's had portables there for at least 4 years. So this would allow us to remove the portables from Granger and balance those two schools. There's some of the general concerns from the committee. We can talk to any of those. I think we've talked about all those, but I'll have to go back and talk to any of those as we move through this. Here's the portion of Thompson that would be relieving and headed to Sendera Ranch. Again, the Thompson growth rate is exceeding the Sendera Ranch zone. It's all part of Sendera Ranch as a community, but the houses are actually coming in around Thompson. Right now, there's not any growth that's currently active up here in the northern part of Sendera Ranch. There's a creek that separates this, plus Sendera Ranch Boulevard. And so and again, the numbers there help us balance the load for about 5 or 6 years, depending on how this growth continues for Sendera Ranch as an overall development. Knowing right now that Sendera Ranch is about 3,000 homes and ultimately is planned out to be 9,000, we'll have several other elementary schools obviously going into this area. But that helps to give us a little cushion of time. And then the last one, of course, our smallest campus, Hatfield, right next door, and the scenario that they have currently, Love is just this red-lined area. They're kind of the donut hole in the donut of Hatfield. And so using that 114 line as a boundary to kind of separate those two and get Hatfield numbers down. If you remember when we talked about this, it looks like both of them are going to be in the red fairly soon. If you remember, I talked about how those are really dependent on a couple of large developments that have been sitting for about 10 years, and we just kind of keep pushing their numbers out every 3 or 4 years because we just haven't seen any movement from them. So once those developments start, we've actually had active talks in both developments about a future elementary school that would then, ultimately probably provide some sort of north-south split for both Love and Hatfield to then handle those developments that are coming in along over here off of 114. But we're just not seeing any activity on those. So I don't expect that to be a problem for us as far as overcapacity until we start seeing dirt move, and then we'll, of course, initiate a plan to start a new middle school or new elementary school there, purchase site and start elementary school there. So that's the 4 boundaries.
Questions, board members?
Anybody? Would you like to ask if anyone is here to speak on the elementary attendance zones?
Okay. Any of you have any comments about any of the elementary school zone changes we've talked about here? Okay. Board members?
Board, I'd recommend approval.
Mr. President,
Mr. Wright.
I move to approve the attendance boundary changes by establishing new attendance zone for Lizzie Curtis Elementary as presented and rezoning portions of Granger Elementary to Hughes Elementary, portions of Thompson Elementary to Sendera Ranch Elementary, and portions of Hatfield Elementary to Clara Love Elementary, while allowing for existing students in their final year at a campus to remain at their current school as recommended by the administration.
A motion has been made by Mr. Wright, seconded by Mr. Sproles for the motion as read. Is there any further discussion on this? All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Okay. As the board's prerogative, is my prerogative, I'm going to open it up to anybody that wants to say something this evening. It's not in accordance to the rules of public participation, so I'm not going to limit you to the 3 minutes, but please keep it to 3 to 5. And I want to give everybody a chance to speak. So if you would like to say something.
Can I speak first, too?
Well, okay.
Mr. Sluter. Board, this is what I'm recommending, and I will take your guidance on this as well. I can't say enough about the process that we went through. Mr. McClure led, his department led, and other administrators helped out with, and the community group we had together. They did a phenomenal job through the committee process, dealing with the elementary lines and the middle school lines, and they presented a recommendation to us. It was we from the Facebook Live, we probably got 200 viewers on the Facebook Live at the town hall meeting that we had in our boardroom. So I was able to take all that and assimilate it to make sure that we were bringing the recommendation to you from the information we got. From the second set of conversations we've had now from our town hall meeting out at Chisholm Trail, and we had a great participation out there. We're getting a lot more feedback, and I believe you've been seeing emails today. We're getting a lot more feedback. And board, I apologize, but I'll just have to tell you, I have not had yet really the time that I feel comfortable assimilating all that until to now to give you a recommendation about the Chisholm Trail. I think the folks who attended the Chisholm Trail meeting would expect me to show due diligence, to really listen to them, to look at that. That it could very well change the recommendation, and it could very well not change it a bit. It's just I haven't had time to really assimilate it into my thought processes, meeting with our executive team, and I would like your permission to be able to continue to work on it through this week. Everybody's going to take some time off next week, but I'm going to work on this next week, and then come to you, and we're going to have a very good discussion about it on the 19th. So I'd like your I'd like your permission to be able to do that. And I do think it's very important that we said, and if our folks do have some comments to make tonight, that will just be part of the record to be able to do that. I know we've got some community concerns, and just, from the Newark City Council. I hope during the time that I've spent with the council, you guys understand that we want a very good relationship. And if you think there's going to be an unintended consequence of this, we want to know what your thoughts are. And of course, parents, we always want to listen to that. So.
I would mention too, Ryder, that in my discussions with you and other board members, that we need to look at the boundary committee and how that is constituted, how many we put in there, and making sure we have every campus, elementary, middle school, high school represented with parents, and that's kind of a standing committee where it meets a couple times a year, except when we have crises like that, and then we'll do it even more. So for your information, we've heard your voice. We appreciate everything that you had to say on Monday night. We do take it to heart, and we're going to make changes to make sure that the board's on the same page as the superintendent, and that we're all here, as Debbie brought up, as a team of 8, and that we share our information not only together but with our constituents out in the community. So with that, if you have any comments, if you would come to the mic, just kind of state your name and address for the record, please. Diane, that'd be fine.
Give them to Brenda.
Yep.
She'll do it right there.
Mr. President, point of order question. Are we able to respond or ask any questions? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Because this is an agenda item, you absolutely
All right, thank you.
First, I'd just like to say thank you so very much, Dr. Warren. This is what we were hoping for. I don't know how this slid by us. I'm not saying that anybody slid it by us, but I know as a school district you understand when we have situations in the city and issues in the city, that's just right on top of us, and everything else is kind of noise on the outside. And I think that's kind of what happened with the boundary changes. We had heard about the boundary changes. In fact, I was at a meeting, I think, 2 years ago when they discussed it. What we were not aware of, or what I was not aware of, was that it was going to take half of the students out of the Chisholm Trail Middle School. I was made aware of that Monday, and I couldn't make the town hall meeting Monday night. But then last night, I did get several phone calls saying, what can we do about this? And so I worked all day trying to figure out if there was any way to at least buy some time, where we had time, where the city of Newark has time to research the impact that it's going to make on our town. I spoke with Mr. McClure this afternoon and told him that I had come up with some figures, but I need to verify those figures. We work on such a small budget. Our budget for the city of Newark is $800,000. If you take half of the students and put them in Adams, then that means half of the parents are not going to be going through our town. And if you don't go through our town, then you don't stop and get gas, and you don't stop at the Family Dollar. You don't stop at any of our businesses. So there is going to be an impact on that. The other concerns were, is this really the best things for the kids? Because kids are supposed to be number one. I know that you're thinking educational-wise, but if you split this school up, it's going to split friends and relationships up. And at that age, especially at that age, and I happen to have three grandchildren at Chisholm Middle School, and I have 3 at Seven Hills. And the peer pressure, or their peers, it's very, very important to them. And it does make a difference on their attitudes. And I think that has to be taken into consideration. Also, if we do lose those teachers and the students, they've been a part of our community. So it's like chopping off part of your relationships, your family. So I think that influence is going to have an impact on the city and on the students. And I don't want to run over the 3 minutes, I'm sorry. But I would really appreciate some time. Just give me some time to research it, to find out exactly how it's going to impact the city of Newark and the students at Chisholm Middle School. One more issue is that I've got the report from 2 years ago. I don't know if it's the same, but it only shows growth at Chisholm going up to 600 and something students. So that means for 10 years, half of that building is not going to be used. I don't think that's the best way to spend our tax dollars when everything else, everything to the east is going to be overcrowded. The city of Newark is not going to be overcrowded. And I understand that the families that live close to Adams, that would be reasonable for them to want their children to go to a closer school. What I don't understand is taking part of the city's extraterritorial jurisdiction, which includes Newark Ranch, Meadowlands, people in the county, and taking them and putting them into Adams. I think that the equity there is there's no equity there. Thank you.
You did a good job. And please tell the mayor and tell the city council that I will be very happy to come to the council meeting and make myself available for their questions as well.
I certainly appreciate it, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Mr. President.
Yes, Steve.
Ma'am, what is your name and what do you do for the city? I'm sorry, I missed that.
It's so funny at council meetings. I make people, what's your name and address? And I am Diane Razor. I'm the city administrator, and I actually live in Decatur. But like I said, I've got 7 grandchildren that live in, around Newark. They're in Newark CTJ.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate you taking the time to hear us this evening, even though you don't plan on action. I was at the meeting on Monday, and I think there was some really good dialogue. I think there were some really good points that were brought up. So I've prepared something to read, and I have something extra that I'd like to add on, so I'll be brief. My husband and I are residents of Newark Ranch, and our daughter is a 7th grader at Chisholm Trail. After listening to the video and attending the meeting, we agree with the proposed boundary for the Leo Adams Middle School. There are some folks that disagree with the proposal, and I feel their arguments are not truly about the boundary change, but about district policies and how the district is going to work with Chisholm as a small school. We're zoned for Eaton, and when our student enters high school, we're happy that she will not have to drive the 17 miles to go to Northwest. She'll only be going about 6 miles down to Eaton. I mention this because we were included in the Eaton boundary for logical reasons. The proposed boundary brings the middle school students together before 9th grade so they can make new friends and have a support system in place when they make that transition to high school. Middle school is a time of personal growth for students, including the transition through puberty, along with the emerging changes in interest, which always leads to a changing in friendships. Friendships forged in the elementary school statistically do not last through high school. It's just a known fact. Kids grow up and life is significantly more complicated academically and socially. This makes the proposed boundary a logical decision. We also feel it's not the district's responsibility to make sure there's an economic balance when creating boundary lines. Schools need to be built to accommodate the growth and development within the district. Mr. McClure made it very clear that all scenarios were considered and discussed with the committee. Leaving the Newark Ranch and Vista Ranch neighborhood students at CTMS would have a very small impact on the attendance numbers. It's unreasonable and it just doesn't make sense to keep those students at CTMS simply because of their family's contribution, financial or otherwise, to the school. We think giving the folks the choice to stay at their current school or to go to Leo Adams would be an acceptable compromise by the district. My folks moved us from Arizona to California after I got out of 7th grade. I started 8th grade in California at one middle school, and then halfway through the school year, I attended my final middle school with the kids I did finally go to high school with. I was able to forge new friendships and during that second semester and maintain those friendships throughout high school. As an adult looking back, I'm happy that that change took place before high school because high school has its own set of unique issues to deal with as an adolescent. Not knowing anyone certainly makes those issues more challenging to deal with. I would like to add this piece. Sorry, where'd it go? As Diane mentioned earlier, that there's no equity in talking about wanting to keep these students at Chisholm because of a potential negative impact on the city income. Yet I find it interesting that they are currently in talks with the city about with Fort Worth about swapping land and possibly de-annexing their city property that runs south of Wise County line down 718. If they did that, they would remove Newark Ranch from their ETJ. So I'm a little curious as to what they're talking about, because now all of a sudden they're concerned, but yet they called a special meeting and met with the city of Fort Worth to have this discussion. And the city of Fort Worth was very interested in doing this. So if they're really looking out for the community interest, they shouldn't be looking at trying to reduce their ETJ or not take care of residents that are currently within that ETJ. We all have faith in you. We have faith in you all and the district as a whole that if the proposal is approved, you would do everything that you can to make sure the students at CTMS would have access to all academic, athletic, and extracurricular programs. We believe that a solution can be found at the school level to ensure all students at CTMS feel like they're part of the Northwest family and not cast aside. We also believe that the parents of new incoming students, combined with the parents who have not yet participated, will replace the PTA contributing parents who will move on with their students. That's the natural progression of PTA participation. At the end of the day, it's the responsibility of the district to provide a quality education to our students in a safe environment. The proposed boundary change alleviates overcrowding long enough to get another middle school built, where that new school, again, will alleviate the new overcrowding that will happen a couple of years after it is built. It's simply growing pains of an incredibly large district that has not had equal growth in all areas. I urge you that when you do decide and make your decision, that you base it off of the data you've been given by the demographers and the input of the folks who will actually be directly impacted by the proposed change. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Would you mind sharing your name as well?
Yes, it's Tabitha Tuckeroni.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah, folks, we're getting a lot of emails, and I would, if you're comfortable saying your name, that'd be great, because that way we can put a face to the name on the email, because we're getting emails from all sides of the issue, so appreciate that.
So again, we appreciate the opportunity just to speak. My name is Jill Kolb. You have no reason to know me, but I am an NISD ambassador. I'm a committee member. I'm a parent volunteer. I'm a community volunteer. I'm a PTA member, and I'm an HOA president. My husband and I moved here 8 years ago after a long search, specifically seeking a home in NISD. Later, we opened our business right here in Hazlet. As you can see, we've put roots down, and we're well established in the area and with the school district. But really, none of that matters, because today I'm here as a parent. I sat quietly at the meeting at Chisholm Trails on Monday, and it was a very one-sided meeting. You heard all of the comments from the parents who were remaining at Chisholm, yet when I attempted to speak, it was very obvious I was not welcomed. I realize that there's been no consideration for our kids in this matter. Our kids meaning the northern end of the blue box. My children, and no child, should ever be looked at as a number, a seat in a classroom, or a body filling the hallways. They should not be talked about by other adults solely based on their ability to raise money in school or bring in PTA volunteers. Their potential athleticism, their intelligence, or their special needs have nothing to do with where they should go to middle school. All of these statements were directed, and I quote, at our affluential kids in the meeting on Monday. What I would like you to consider about our kids is their emotional stability, their need to continue their education with their friends that they've been in school with since kindergarten and hopefully will continue through high school. Our kids are Schluter kids, many since kindergarten. They have friends from all over the Schluter boundaries in all different grades. To move less than 20 kids per grade will be devastating socially. This will in turn impact their academic performance, their self-perception. They will feel ostracized from the friends that they've known for years and will struggle to fit in with the groups of 2 well-established elementary schools. I can't even begin to fathom how they will return to Eaton after cliques are formed, teams are established, and leaders have been determined. There is a reason that the committee set the boundary lines based on the high school boundaries. These kids have been told for years that Adams was their school. As parents, we worked diligently to help push the bond through. They've watched it being built. They've participated in the decisions on the colors and the mascots. They've attended groundbreaking ceremonies. You're now looking at the possibility of moving less than 6% of Schluter to another middle school, way across town. Now they're in limbo. They have no idea where they're going to school in the fall. Long bus rides aside, because as we were told, children have survived bus rides for years, consider the struggle of extracurricular activities, tutoring, FCA and track, which is all before school, football, volleyball, basketball, and theater, which is after school. How do you possibly get a child to school at 7 a.m. for track and an elementary school child to the school at 7:20 when it's a huge drive against all the traffic? How do you choose which child gets to stand and wait for you? How do you choose which child gets excluded from participating? I myself have had to limit my children's opportunities as a working mom, and I try to make it to as many events and practices as possible without having to rely on other people. But many of us are struggling to keep up. The opening of Adams Middle School in 2018 will alleviate many of these challenges. The drive to Chisholm is approximately 20 minutes. The drive to Adams is 7. I understand that many of the board members do not live in this area. I know you've heard of our traffic struggles, but you don't have to experience it firsthand every day. Traveling between Eaton and Chisholm, or Chisholm to Schluter, is easily a 30-minute drive. Diane is correct. What she said about dividing kids in middle school is detrimental to our kids. And yet we're looking at the possibility of doing that. I have, and I sent to the board earlier today, signatures from 90 people representing 65 of the families in Vista Ranch that feel strongly that our kids should be able to attend Adams. You'll find signatures of grandparents, empty nesters, homeschool parents, and parents of current NISD kids. We know what the impact will be to our kids if you take them out of their feeder pattern for 3 years and then attempt to put them back. We know what it will do, and why would we add that extra stress to these children in their formative middle school and high school years? You just stated that the committee did an amazing job setting the boundaries for the elementary schools. Why isn't the same committee recommendation for the middle schools just as valid? NISD has an obligation to help all kids, not just the ones that have special needs, 504 plans, or socioeconomic challenges. Remember, our first core belief is kids come first. This should apply to all NISD kids. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Cole.
My name is Debbie Thomas, and I hadn't planned to speak, so I'll be brief. I know I spoke to several of you board members today, as well as you, Dr. Warren, and I appreciate your time. This is a complicated issue. It's not easy to sit in the chairs you're sitting in now, and there is no way to see that every single child in the district is going to get exactly what the parents want them to get. I do want you to really look at what it will mean to students that are going to be competing and learning at a 3A level when they do go to high school and they're expected to assimilate with Eaton or with Northwest, that with students who have been competing at a 5A level. They're not, we'll have a few outstanding students that will make it, that will be able to participate in UIL activities, but the majority of them, I'm afraid, because they won't have that experience, will not be able to participate. And we all know that UIL is one of the things that keeps the students involved and engaged in school, engaged in learning. And when you take that from them, those very students are the ones that may be at risk. So I know that I spoke Monday night. I want to make sure it's for the record that I'm speaking to you as a previous board member, and I want you to continue to look at this. You were elected at large to represent every child in the district, and I believe each and every one of you has a heart for children, or you wouldn't be sitting there. And so I appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate the time you're spending to look at this. I hope and pray that you will come up with an answer that will address most, if not all, of the problems. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. My name is Andrea Sandifer, and I live in the Vista Ranch community. I have sent several emails throughout this last week as all of these boundary lines are being discussed. I appreciate Mr. McClure responding to an email. I would like to say that our neighborhood in general was very concerned about this last week, and people were discussing attending the meeting. We did a petition stating that we would love for the current boundary proposal to be accepted by the board. And our neighborhood received contact, I guess, over the weekend that it was not totally necessary to voice our concerns at the meeting Monday night. So we had a small showing at Chisholm Trail Middle School on Monday night. I happened to be at that meeting, and I would agree with Jill that after she spoke and was interrupted by several different people, the tone of the meeting was very evident. And I felt like any opinions that I would like to express would not have been taken in just the manner in which I wanted them to be. I care about all kids in this district. I've been through the leadership program. I substitute here. I truly care about every child, but I care most about mine, which I think we all could agree on. And I think that we should stick with these proposed boundaries. Our children have attended Schluter. My daughter is a 6th grader at Chisholm Trail. She was the first class to go all the way through Carl E. Schluter Elementary. And she has been told from the get-go that she would attend Adams. We voted for that bond package, and it was delayed, so Adams didn't actually open when we were supposed to last year, when she would have gone straight from Schluter to Adams. We've had this delay. She knows I'm here, and she's in turmoil about the situation of the fact that half of her friends who she went to elementary school with, she might have to say goodbye to at the end of this year, and then kind of start over with her peer group. Because even though it was said earlier this evening that girls don't stick or kids don't stick with their friends from elementary, I would disagree. She has absolutely stuck with all of her friends from elementary school, and I would hate to see those bonds be broken and them ostracized just by our community, because that would be the only people that my kids know will be the people that they go to elementary school with. I had wrote down a couple of notes really quick I'd just like to go over. I agree with what Jill said, that Dr. Warren did say that the committee did an excellent job proposing these boundary lines, and so I would ask that you would honor the work that they did and approve this proposal. As Jill said, our neighborhood alone is 8% of Schluter. So taking those 50-something kids and placing them in a school where they don't know anyone and are starting over fresh is a big ask. And then also moving them back to Eaton when it's time for them to be freshmen, I think is even a bigger ask. I have 2 kids that are on 2 totally different spectrums. One I think could handle it okay. The other, it would devastate her. There is no way that she could handle that type of change without an academic fallout, and I don't know what else. She's just not wired to be able to handle that transition of back and forth. I would like to say at Schluter, they do a great job of creating community. I can't tell you how many times we go in the door and there's Eaton students, cheerleaders, athletes, volunteers that go there, and they're even doing that with Adams now and getting them excited. Our kids hear about Eaton and Adams all day long as Schluter Spurs. And so to ask them to step away from the group while everyone else is going that path and them not be part of that, I think ostracizes them from the get-go if they know that that's not where they're going to attend middle school. Sorry, my phone keeps locking up. I also love the fact that on Monday night, Dr. Warren said in the presentation that you would have events for the community in Rome and Newark. And I think that is fantastic. We've been at Chisholm almost a year now, and there have been no events for the community whatsoever. So I do appreciate the city involvement and the concern now, but there has been no concern to this point forward. And so I'm wondering why all of a sudden we're all concerned about this. I drive to Chisholm several times a day, and I don't really stop in the community because most of the time I'm in a rush to get to and from the school to move on with our lives. My kids don't ride the bus because of extracurricular activities. I'm in the car about an hour and a half. From the time I get to Schluter, get to Chisholm, get home, we can't ride the bus because we have extracurriculars in Decatur and Justin and all over the place. It's just not even an option. So going to Adams for me would be a huge time saver. I would be more effective at my job. I could volunteer more and not spend as much time behind the wheel carting kids back and forth to their schools. So when I say lifestyle in my emails, that's what I mean. That's 3 hours a day that I'm taking kids to and from school and activities at school. I would also like to ask the board to consider how middle schoolers affect a city's bottom line. So our tax dollars are going to Chisholm no matter what, and I don't understand how our children aren't purchasing items in Newark or Rome, and so I'm not quite sure where they affect the bottom line unless us as parents stop and purchase something, which I think we all have said just a few minutes ago. We don't really do that often. The last point I would like to make very quickly is that she mentioned the children at Chisholm having to assimilate into Northwest when they go from like a smaller school to a bigger school. Kids will have to do that at some point. Whether it's going into college or going into the workplace, we all have to learn how to assimilate. My statement to that would be, at least they're assimilating with their peer group. The group of children you're talking about moving would be pulled from their peer group multiple times and asked to assimilate over and over and over again. So I thank you for your time. This is very near and dear to our hearts in Vista Ranch, and we hope that you will just approve the proposed boundaries. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Liesl James, and I'm a resident in Vista Ranch. I actually work for the Hershey-Bedford Independent School District, so I drive quite a distance, but I'm here on behalf of my little 3-year-old and my 2nd grader, who actually, before we moved in October, attended O.A. Peterson in Northwest, and so we just seem to be on one end of growth and one end of the other. But I wanted to say I wasn't planning on coming because, after all, middle school's several years away. Last night, Schluter Elementary hosted an open house for us parents. And it was really the first time, because we arrived in October, that I was able to be in the Schluter cafeteria. And right outside those windows is VR Eaton High School. And if you do the little roundabout right there is Leo Adams Middle School. And one of the great pleasures that Olivia and I have had as we've transitioned from O.A. Peterson to Schluter has been the building of Adams and watching that construction take place. And so like my Vista Ranch neighbors, I never thought that our attending Leo Adams, which is 4.9 miles away, was in jeopardy until I understood that there was some discussion about it. If you are in that area, Schluter, Adams, Eaton, it's all in the roundabout. And so it surprises me that the board would consider not adopting the current proposal and having Vista Ranch students drive all the way to Chisholm Trail. That's not a school that my little girl sees. She doesn't see herself as that. She already sees herself as a VR Eaton Eagle cheerleader and is making dreams to be such when she gets older. And so even though we're talking about our middle school students, we're still talking about our elementary students who interact on a day-to-day basis with not only our VR Eaton students, but also have the excitement already to be Leo Adams Lions. And the excitement has built in our community to see that. We anticipate the growth that is also coming behind Carl Schluter. And so if the board is to consider anything, looking at 287 as a possible division, where Vista Ranch and the neighbors around Schluter, I promise it will fill eventually. But I'm surprised to see that Adams is already going to max out when neighborhoods such as O.A. Peterson, Hazlitt, Lizzie Curtis could also be absorbed forward to Chisholm Trail. But 287 is a very natural split for Vista Ranch. It would put my drive to Chisholm Trail to be 9.4 miles. And as one of my neighbors who's already done the drive said, it's a 20-minute drive and we know construction is headed that way. So I would politely, respectfully ask the board to allow my little second grade girl in 4 years to be a Leo Adams Lion and to accept the proposed boundaries as you propose them, if anything. But if you need to make adoptions, please consider looking at 287. The growth is coming back that way, and to me, 287 is a very natural split, and it does not make sense for Vista Ranch neighborhoods to drive across 287 to get to Chisholm Trail Middle School. So thank you for what you do.
My name is Jan Van Wagner, and I appreciate, Dr. Warren, you saying that you would like to postpone maybe the vote until the 19th, because I think there are a lot of parents that didn't get to express their concern at the meeting. I was there Monday night, and those that did were kind of for. There were a group that were for this boundary change, but there are quite a few that aren't, and there's quite a few that didn't get to even realize that they are a part of this decision. If you care what the parents say, there's quite a few parents that felt like they were told that the elementary schools were not important. They didn't have anything to do with this decision. I disagree with that because people move into the area as elementary kids and they move on up. They don't want to have to move after their elementary experience to another middle school. The middle school is so drastically cut. If it wasn't cut so drastically, I don't think it would make such a difference, but it's so drastically cut, I think it really will affect Newark as the city. There was a gentleman, and all I know is what the gentleman said Monday night. He had a big project that he was going to do in Newark, and now if this passes, he's not going to develop it. I don't know. All I know is what he said at the meeting. That's all I'm aware of. And I think people move into areas according to the schools. If you ask any real estate agent, they'll tell you that people move to good school districts and schools that they're known to be excellent. And Chisholm middle school is excellent, and we have wonderful teachers there. And I hate to see that change. And I believe it would. You know, you'd have half the kids, half the students, half the teachers, and teachers would be stretched. They would have to teach several subjects, I would think, in order to cover everything. And I think that's a shame. And I understand areas that want to go to the new schools. Of course, they want to have their kids go to a brand new school. But I think you do need to consider the kids that are in Chisholm Middle School area, and they're staying there. And I appreciate you kind of holding the vote off so that more parents, I don't know how maybe they could email you, could make their concerns. I think it's been rushed. It's only been, 3 weeks that the public has known about it. I know your committee's been going for a while, but the public hasn't known about it, and they're just getting wind of it. And that's why I think you're getting a lot of emails, is because people are understanding, wait a minute, now we see what's going to happen. They didn't know that before. And I appreciate you wanting to hear from parents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just one clarification. We actually posted the first maps of the recommendation probably mid-January. Okay. I just want to make sure you know.
Yeah, I will say on behalf of the board, 2/3 of the board went to school here from elementary on. I went to Rome Elementary, so did Judy. My kids went to Seven Hills, Prairie View, Chisholm Trail, Northwest, and it's been a great program. I don't just represent the West Side, I represent the district just as each one of these board members do. And every one of them are very compassionate and passionate about what we do for the kids. And it's going to be a tough decision. So whichever way we vote come the 19th, if we end up voting on the 19th, we're going to make some people mad. But you can blame us, but you guys are neighbors. So keep that in mind, and don't hold anything against anybody else that's here today, because everybody just wants the best for their kids. So does board members have anything else they'd like to say?
I was not able to attend Monday night, but wanted to thank everyone that came out tonight and spoke. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Just curious how many of you were on the committee? You were? Okay. I just wanted to thank you because I know it was a hard job. It was definitely. Appreciate it.
Anything else?
Thank you, Board. Appreciate you allowing us the time to take all this into consideration.
And I will take a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Josh and Steve.